Good morning, church. So we're carrying on with the theme of myths and busting them. I thought I'd just start with that sentence because the title is so terrible. What a statement. Christians are superior to others. Well, I had a wee look in at this word superior in the Oxford Dictionary, just so I could try and gain a little more understanding, and I found out that it meant exactly what I thought it did. Two things: a person in higher rank, status or quality, a boss, or maybe like an athlete who's perfect at their thing, where they nail it every time, like a boss. Or number two, a person having or showing an overly high opinion of themselves, conceited even. And I have a feeling that the title of this sermon is more geared up to the latter meaning. This leads me to think that this could be a potentially controversial and dangerous sermon. So, let's go. Actually, if something in this talk resonates with you in a negative way, please don't be offended. I promise that I didn't write offences in it just for you. I wanted to start with an Adam Savage quote, but I ended up with an Ernest Hemingway one. There is nothing noble in being superior to your fellow man. True nobility is being superior to your former self. And I thought that's kind of a cool line to start off with and keep in mind. So to kick off this talk, I really want to dispel the myth. I'm not a fan of the title, and I just want to move on from it. So I feel like there's only one way to do this quickly. So let's put it to the vote. Those who think Christians are not superior over others, raise your hand. Oh, phew. Those who think Christians are superior to others, raise your hand. Oh, I was going to say there are crickets chirping, but no. Phew, that could have gone badly. But there we have it, myth busted. A room full of Christians have decided that Christians are not self-inflated. There you go. Now that we have unanimously busted this myth without any bias, we are going to have a closer look at this superiority complex thing, which in a way is being maybe judgy or controlling. I'm better than you, you should aim to be like me, or do as I do because I'm the best, that kind of thing. Hopefully you agree that sounds like a generalized superior person. I'm sure you have your own thoughts to add to that as well. After looking at this, we'll examine some things with a touch of perspective and a sprinkle of grace, almost like baking a cake. So now we're going to put on our WWJD t-shirt and start in Luke 6 with Jesus speaking to a gathering of people. Do not judge others, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn others, or it will come back against you. Forgive others, and you will be forgiven. Give, and you will receive. Your gift will return to you in full, pressed down, shaken together to make room for more, running over and poured out into your lap. The amount you give will determine the amount you get back. Then Jesus gave the following illustration. Can one blind person lead another? Won't they both fall into a ditch? Students are not greater than their teacher, but the student who is fully trained will become like the teacher. And why worry about the speck in your friend's eye when you have a log in your own? How can you think of saying, friend, let me help you get rid of that speck in your eye, when you can't see past the log in your own? Hypocrite! First get rid of the log in your own eye, then you will see well enough to deal with the speck in your friend's eye. As a pre-Christian, I never felt like Christians thought they were better than me. I only had experienced goodness. I recall my first experience of Christians outside of my family. There were 3 elderly ladies, and they would come to our school, our primary school, sharing stories about Jesus. They never routinely came, but it was exciting when they did. The strongest memory I have of them is playing a black and white film of some missionaries in a jungle. It was captivating, and I longed to have a machete and chop through the jungle with them, searching for tribes. These ladies shared love. They didn't judge me or try picking specks out of my eye. They never tut-tutted. They simply accepted each of us, pointed to Jesus, and inspired us with wanting more of what they had on the inside. And I guess, in a way, in their own way, they shaped my worldview of what Christians were like. You just can't place the value on Bible in schools and the influence a person who is willing to step forward can make. 3 elderly ladies in my case, to the point where I'm still talking about them 40 years later. Well, that was the feel-good story. I was just warming you up. What about the other side? When we purposefully raise ourselves up and lower others down, that one's a bit heavy just yet, so we'll begin with something a little lighter. I think at times we unwittingly put people lower than ourselves, totally unintentionally, but sometimes it happens. For example, what does a person who doesn't believe or is yet to believe in Jesus think of the term non-Christian? That non part sounds pretty negative, but that's what they are. Maybe they just want to be known as a person. At the age of 17, I left school and apprenticed to become a painter of houses. Still a pre-Christian at this stage. It was in the 1990s, a very exciting time to be a teenager. And so began my career, a career that later showcased houses that are painted in magazines, flew me overseas, and in a way influenced our move to Wanganui with my current job. I just wanted to throw those bits in there because of the thing that I'm going to say next. Painting houses is a great job. However, if I gained $1 for every time I heard the joke that painters are drunks or druggies, I could quite possibly retire. I know that these people never intended to make themselves superior or belittle me, but the words are out there and they have power. As a 17-year-old kid, I felt the shame of having paint on my hands and clothes. I was taught by my tech tutors that I needed to change my clothes and wash my hands. Not to get rid of the chemicals on myself, but so that I made myself more socially acceptable in public. I didn't openly share my occupation. Then the power of those joking words took over. I guess I accepted them and dove into the expectation of what a painter in the 90s was. Words have power. At the start of my Bible, it reads, God said, let there be light. And there was, and it was good. The people said, painters are drunks. And he was, and it was not so good. How wonderful for me that later in the Bible, Jesus said, come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. And I did, and it was really good. Bruce Lee, for those who remember the actor, said this interesting quote, don't speak negatively about yourself, even as a joke. Your body doesn't know the difference. Change the way you speak about yourself and you can change your life. What you're not changing, you're also choosing. And how much more can you change your life when you choose to accept God's words over your life and start speaking those out loud? The book of James has some great life-giving words as well as thoughts about superiority if you're interested into diving into that theme. So, what makes an individual feel more superior than another? Is it money, wealth and possessions? Is it strength, overcoming people by force? Is it influence or position, bending the will of others to your bidding? Is it fame, people who don't even know you admiring you? Is it knowledge, outwitting people? Each of those aren't necessarily inherently evil or sinful, but when those are the blocks we build ourselves up with and put our faith in, then maybe they're not so good. Luke 6, to carry on. A good tree can't produce bad fruit, and a bad tree can't produce good fruit. A tree is identified by its fruit. Figs are never gathered from thorn bushes, and grapes are not picked from bramble bushes. A good person produces good things from the treasury of a good heart, and an evil person produces evil things from the treasury of an evil heart. What you say flows from what is in your heart. Well, here we reach a slightly heavier story, one of which that causes me to see why others might view Christians as being superior. I ended up painting for that company for around about 8 or so years. Somewhere at the 2/3 part of these years was where I found my identity in God and gave those burdens to Jesus. Forgiven and glowing. You know, that feeling? During that time, we painted a lot of high-end houses, very nice homes. One particular house, not in this town, was for a Christian couple, and I didn't enjoy this job very much. The job dragged out. We painted their home. We made it look amazing. The one thing that drove my boss, his mantra, if you will, was to make people happy by making their houses look beautiful. And we did. We created some beautiful metallic feature walls in this home, very dazzling in the early 2000s. Then it came time for them to pay the bill and be handed over the house. And somehow they moved in before they paid. This was where things fell to pieces. Changes needed to be made. One of the metallic walls had a chair leg put through it as they moved in. Scratches and dents appeared, and they didn't want to pay until it was all rectified. This is the dragging out part. I was there by myself for a week. They would play Christian music loudly, as if it was some form of evangelism. They spoke loudly on the phone, telling their friends about how blessed they were by God for the cheapness of the build. But in actual fact, they spoke harshly to the building manager, demanding discounts for all items and money back for other things, and a list that just kept growing and growing. I didn't enjoy that job. I was new to Christianity, and the freshness of it was surging through me. But what these people were doing was confusing and hurtful. The part that hurt the most was being in the builder's office and listening to him talk with my boss about the situation of how horrible the homeowners were. The builder said something like, "Why would I want to be a Christian if that's what it is?" His worldview of Christians was being shaped. You know, I do think it is a myth that Christians are superior to others. No one is more superior than another. We as Christians are called to be servants. Philippians 2, 3 and 4, as you heard earlier, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but to each of you to the interests of the others. There's a whole lot more wisdom around these two verses if you want to look up those two. However, just like all groups that others belong to, there are a few who always seem to think they're just a little bit better than those around them. Maybe I have been judgmental in sharing this story. There may have been some circumstances I didn't know or understand about the situation. It is just this perspective I was viewing through. But that perspective is an important object lesson because I was also viewing the perspective of the builder. How we treat people and what we say to them is so important, even more so if we're holding up a banner for Jesus. We need to show humility and love. For me, it's not about showing off how financially blessed we are when we follow Jesus. This feels like a completely flawed logic. Yes, some people are financially blessed, and that is a good thing. But for all Christians, I think it's about sharing how spiritually blessed we are and how you could be if you follow Jesus. Other blessings might come too, and that's nice, but those extra blessings don't make you a more superior person. So why do you keep calling me Lord, Lord, when you don't do as I say? I will show you what it's like when someone comes to me, listens to my teaching, and then follows it. It's like a person building a house who digs deep and lays the foundation on a solid rock. Digging deep into a solid rock sounds like a lot of effort and perseverance, as some builders might know. But what a foundation. When the flood waters rise and break against that house, it stands firm because it is well built. But anyone who hears and doesn't obey is like a person who builds a house right on the ground, without a foundation. When the floods sweep down against the house, it will collapse into a heap of ruins. As I wrote this sermon and dove into those moments of reflection, one moment of standing on a rock during a storm kept coming to mind. And I battled with the thought of sharing this, but I really want to. I want to say that the storm was easy, like standing with your face high into the summer rain, but it wasn't like that. Phoebe shared her testimony a couple of weeks ago and mentioned that while living in Oakuni, Amy and I lost our jobs. This was during COVID. Well, I felt like the world turned their back on us. Our situation was pretty dire. We hadn't quite finished building our house in Horapito, and it felt like we were already going to lose it. I reached out to people who I had admired in my earlier years for help and advice. Some of them simply said, "This is what you chose." Friends dropped sentences that were innocent in what was said and implied so much guilt. Some friends just said some very hateful and hurtful things. People would look down on me or avoid me when I was in the supermarket. Shop owners wouldn't let me in. Some places even had security guards stationed at the door for people like us. I wasn't allowed to pick my kids up from the classroom. Pretty hard. I asked several people for a job, and they said no, because I wasn't like them. The storm was real. People either didn't care or they just didn't realize. But I knew that it would be okay with God, even if we lost our house and everything in it. Knowing that didn't mean I was filled with joy. I cried a lot. I was hurt and scared, but He is the rock. The experience was horrible, but I knew we would be okay so long as we held on to God. So, make sure your rock is solid. So what is it that Jesus is saying when he wants us to do? When he said, "Why do you keep calling me Lord, Lord, when you don't do what I say?" Well, let's take a closer look to the start of Jesus' conversation, a little bit earlier, 6:27 in Luke. "But to you who are willing to listen, I say, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who hurt you. If someone slaps you on one cheek, offer the other cheek also. If someone demands your coat, offer your shirt also. Give to anyone who asks, and when things are taken away from you, don't try to get them back. Do to others as you would like them to do to you. If you love only those who love you, why should you get any credit for that? Even sinners love those who love them. But if you do good only to those who do good to you, why should you get credit? Even sinners do that much. And if you lend money only to those who can repay you, why should you get credit? Even sinners will lend to other sinners for a full return. Love your enemies." Love your enemies written a second time. It must be pretty important. And I have to say, what would a sermon be if it didn't have any mispronounced Greek? Agapio means to love in a moral or social sense. And that word enemies, ethiosos, like a dinosaur, primarily denoting hated or hateful, an adversary, a foe. So it really is love your enemies. Do good to them. Lend to them without expecting to be repaid. Then your reward from heaven will be very great, and you will truly be acting as children of the Most High. For He is kind to those who are unthankful and wicked. You must be compassionate, just as your Father is compassionate. Jesus asks us to be compassionate to our enemies, those who would hurt us, those who would raise themselves above us, those who squash us down and turn their backs on us. Those are the people we need to love and accept, people who believe they are overly superior. I think one way of loving people who we find challenging is to perhaps change our perspective. So I'm going to finish with this. A couple of weeks ago, I was wandering around the supermarket with my wife. We were busy buying secret treats for when the kids went to bed. We purchased said treats and made our way to the exit. And suddenly, this wee toddler cut across in front of us, causing Amy and I to stop. Her mum looked at us and mouthed sorry, and we smiled our understanding back at her. And this thought hit me. It's perspective. The distance between me and that child was maybe 1.5 steps from my perspective. But from the child's perspective, she probably had 4 or 5, maybe even 6 steps. Plenty of space to make it. I like that word, perspective. That Christian couple, maybe the builder made a huge mistake that he didn't share, and they were just hurting and didn't know any other way forward. Those people I viewed as mentors and neighbours and friends who I felt like turned their back on us when we needed a touch of light, they were most likely scared and didn't know how to react. We are all people on a journey of trying our best with what we have. Sometimes my actions or my words may be viewed as superior or even offensive. Maybe I need to think a little moment longer before I open my mouth, having that moment like a starfish. Sometimes I may perceive a person as being superior when in actual fact they're going through something, or they're simply trying to do their best with what they have. All the time, I need to love my enemies. Even when it gets to the point of losing everything, I need to be compassionate, extending grace. Thank you very much for listening.